What's good, guys? Welcome back to another video. So yesterday's trade setup, while the idea was right, the market conditions just were not there. Already mentioned that because we have so much news coming later today, as well as on Wednesday and Thursday, the conditions are going to be much better, heading into, for example, today. So even though that is the case, I did make a call and the call didn't end up playing out. And so I'm still going to consider that as a loss. So that is going to put us down to 106 wins out of the last 132 calls that we've made over the last 7 months. So if you're new to this channel, just understand that you're probably in the right place because we still tend to be right more often than we're wrong. But anyways, today I'm going to get into Bitcoin, going to get into Solana, going to get into Ethereum. I'm going to give you the trade setup for today. Again, we have news heading into it later at 8:30 a.m. And so this is going to be a pretty interesting day, but tomorrow is still going to be arguably the biggest day in the entire month. Not only do you have CPI for the GBP, but most importantly, you have federal funds rate. If you would like to understand my kind of like weekly outlook, because this week is very likely going to be the biggest week in, for the rest of the year, actually, because what happens this week is quite literally going to determine if the bull market continues or not. I've already made a video on that just so I don't have to repeat this every single day when it's kind of like an intraday video. I'm going to link the video down below. Check it out once you are done with this one. But otherwise, yeah, let's dive into today. So 8:30 a.m. is going to be the kind of time window that we're going to want to look for. Yesterday's candle closed bullish on Bitcoin, so that's a really good sign, which means that we are reasonably going to look for upside today. Now, besides that, if you guys recall, yesterday I marked out this fair value gap right here. I did say that Bitcoin was going to fill this in, and right after filling this in yesterday, price started pumping. So even though yesterday's setup was short, just understand that this is in line with kind of like a bigger picture play here. If we take a look at the weekly chart, since we are bullish, we are looking for buys underneath the weekly open so that we can ride the price higher into the weekly close. Similarly, for example, let's say that we were bullish on this week here. Anytime price went underneath the weekly open was an opportunity for us to buy for an expansion towards the upside. Same thing with this candle. Open here, look for buys below, expansion to the upside. Yesterday, it's the same. Yesterday ended up going lower. I did already mention this in the weekly outlook video, but that is the situation where we look to buy. And seems like so far, especially if today's candle closes bullish as well, that's going to be the weekly bottom. At least for the rest of this week, I highly doubt that we're going to revisit that bottom. However, that highly depends on how the price closes today. But just looking at the 1 hourly chart so far, there are two possible scenarios going on right now. First of all is just following along the system, right? Part of the system dictates that we want to trade with time frame alignment, which means that at the moment, the daily chart is pointing towards the upside because we have bullish daily bias. So the 1 hourly chart, we also kind of want to lean towards that direction. And you can see that we have had multiple changes in state of delivery. This is your first one, and this is your second one. So by all accounts, right, the trade following the system today is supposed to be towards the bullish direction. There is a slight problem with this though, which is the fact that this kind of looks like a market native sell model, where you are getting the smart money reversal. So 1, 2 impulses up into some kind of 1 hourly higher time frame bearish, kind of PDRA. And the reason why we are still technically bearish on the 1 hourly chart is because we got that CISD over here yesterday. And so this entire block, until this gets closed above on the 1 hourly chart, this is going to act as resistance until, otherwise prove it. And today we could prove that wrong, or we could respect the market maker sell model and you form a lower high here and then you start going down and you're going to revisit 114,400. So there are a couple of ways that this can play out. But again, purely based off of the system, the trade for today is going to be the upside, but we are going to play this with this market maker sell model in mind, because when the facts are like in front of your face, it's stupid to just ignore it and not take it into account whatsoever. The way that we're going to take this into account, by the way, is to not jump into trades prematurely right now. As of the time that I'm recording this, it is around 6 a.m. New York. News is going to be dropping at 8:30 a.m. New York, which means that's going to be the timing where, for example, let's zoom into the lower time frame charts. If you fail to make a new high by the time 8:30 rolls around, in fact, I would even go so far as to say that the best trading window for today is going to be between 7:30 a.m. till 9:30 a.m. New York, which is an hour before news and an hour after news. If you do not get a decent setup, or at the very least, if you do not start forming new highs and new lows, then you are not going to have a long setup for today. Because what's likely going to happen is that you are going to form some kind of a lower high, and then you're going to continue breaking lower. Right now, price is already in some kind of bearish order flow, at least from the 5-minute perspective. So if this continues, then you're going to be expecting further bearish price action. So this is a bearish order block right here. This is another bearish order block. So with both of these confirmations, we are in bearish order flow. What you want to see specifically is for at least this order block here to get blown through, so that you can flip the potential resistance into potential support. So that's specifically what you want to look for. Now, alternatively, we may, right? This is just another kind of scenario that I'm keeping in mind here, is that you are going to sweep the Asia lows, but then at the same time, the Asia lows has already been swept right before London. So at the moment, things are looking kind of bearish. So the conditions for this trade is quite straightforward. You just want to see some kind of bounce, and 100% you do not want to see this low right here at 115,000 flat get disrespected, because if this happens, then boom, you have just flipped this entire series of up candles into bearish resistance, and the trade setup is going to be towards an outside instead. If in the event that you do get a sell side setup, meaning like if price does not break above that order block and whatever, if price actually just comes back on retests it and starts breaking lower, then you can reasonably anticipate today to be a short day. However, I'm probably not going to be taking that setup because my system requires me to have time frame alignment. But I understand that you watching this video may not have the same system as me. So in the event that your system calls for a short, that is also a viable scenario. So far, it's a bit too early to tell. I wish I could give you a much clearer answer. Again, there are some days out there where the trade setup for the day is super clear. And there are some days like this where we have reasons to believe up and we have also reasons to believe down. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to call, or kind of like make an official call on Twitter at _the_art_of_crypto. This is where I do my live trading whenever there are days where it's worth trading. This is where I'll be calling the trade setups and calling the entries and sharing ideas about altcoins, sharing ideas about alpha, whatever. Feel free to follow me at _the_art_of_crypto if you would like to follow along with that. But otherwise, let's get into Solana and Ethereum. So taking a look at Ethereum to kick things off. It's much more bearish compared to Bitcoin, that's for sure. It had a bearish candle close. So technically today you are supposed to look for shorts on Ethereum, but let's take a look about that. So before I get into that though, just remember, we are still in the middle of some kind of a retracement. Either you come into this block right here or you sweep out all of these relatively equal lows from back here. Either way, you are retracing in the moment, and until price starts forming a new high, you are going to anticipate more and more downside. But keep in mind that in the bigger picture, this is just a retracement and the bull market is still going to continue. However, I highly doubt that we are going to sweep out all of these, primarily because tomorrow we are going to get federal funds rate. And so potentially you are just going to retrace back into this order block. That is going to be the bottom. So if you are a swing trader or if you're a slightly longer term trader, then that area right there is going to be very good to take advantage of. However, keep in mind that because federal funds rate is going to be a pretty volatile event, there is a very high likelihood, or at least there is a chance, where there will be a wick underneath all of these relatively equal lows before some sort of a V-shaped recovery within the same candle. So in the event that you set your stop loss here and you get stopped out, and you see price starting to go back towards the upside, do not hesitate to jump back in. That would be a suggestion. But otherwise, yesterday's candle closed bearish, so we're going to take a look at how price action is playing out. And oh my god, this is choppy. This would actually be super tough to trade, but the setup for today, since Ethereum is going to be towards the short side, is that right here you have a bunch of relatively equal highs right before some sort of a fair value gap. And so the setup for today is going to be much more straightforward compared to Bitcoin, where you're just going to do this with your target here at 44.63. So basically, you're going to want to look for a sweep above 45.40. That would be the ideal scenario because you would fill in the higher time frame PDOA. Now, the reason why relatively equal highs are so important and why they work so well is because I want you to imagine, like, retail traders are going to be all looking at this level right here and be like, oh, wow, look, Ethereum has gotten rejected from this strong resistance 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So if this resistance were to get broken, then there are going to be two camps of people, right? And primarily it's going to be the breakout traders who are like, oh, super strong resistance has been broken. Oh, let's go long. And they're going to go long right at really high prices. And guess what's going to happen? Price is going to reverse. They're going to be trapped in their long positions because chances are retail traders are not using a stop loss. And eventually, with a strong enough retrace, they are going to get stopped out. And this is the essence of how the smart money likes to trade. Remember, the market is a zero-sum game. for every dollar that you quote unquote make from the markets, you're not actually making that out of thin air. Whatever you win, someone else is losing. And most of the time, when you're winning, the counterparty to that is the smart money, right? The brokers, the exchanges, the funds. And whenever you win, they lose money. And so if you flip that around, it's in their best interest to cause as many people to lose money as possible so that they stand to gain the most. That is the essence of smart money trading. And that is also the essence of what we teach inside Bootcamp. If you would like my help one-on-one to help you set up that system, for me to teach you everything I know that has allowed me to achieve kind of like an 80% win rate over the last 7 months, publicly tracked by the way, then feel free to click the first link in the description box below and I'll get you profitable within the next 90 days. But otherwise, Ethereum is going to be pretty straightforward. The other kind of contingency plan is that right here, you have a bearish order block. And in the event that you do not sweep above, and let's say by the time 7:30 rolls around, you do not sweep above, then this is going to be what you want to look for instead. Now, I'm also not saying that the target is going to be here for sure, but this is a reasonable area to take some profits. Most of the time though, for example, if I were to take this trade right now, I would just set my target at 2R, which means for every dollar that I risk, I make 2 back. That is all I need as a trader. And truthfully, that is what most people need. You don't need like 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 Rs. You just need to get 2R consistently over time, build that confidence so that you can get to a point where you know for a fact that your system works, so that you can start putting more money behind your trades with the confidence that this is something that produces, or rather, this is something that has a positive return over the long term. At that point, you can imagine if I risk $10,000 here and I make 2R back, I'm making 20K. It's much better than, try to aim for like a 10R and placing yourself really tight and getting stopped out like 9 out of 10 times. And then the whole time you're just risking like $100 a trade. Even when you win, you're just making like pennies. So stick to 2R, build that confidence as a trader, because that is the most important ingredient that you need to succeed as a trader. Arguably, without confidence as a trader, there is nothing else that truly matters. By the way, guys, I'm so sorry for, my voice sounds different or whatever. Like there is a huge, I'm always like this when I come back home, probably because of the dust or some allergies or whatever, but like nose just gets really sensitive. But anyways, now that we're done on Ethereum, those are the 2 setups. Again, pretty straightforward. Let's take a look at Solana. So Solana so far has taken out the daily target that we set last week, which is beautiful. Right now though, you're in the middle of retracing, which means that long term, we're still looking for longs, but short term, based on yesterday's daily candle close, we are going to be looking for shorts. And I think we are going to see a pretty similar setup here. Now, if there is one chart that I would probably lean towards, I'm going to lean towards Ethereum because it is looking much weaker. And the fact that you have multiple relatively equal highs there and a very clear Fibonacci gap makes that, for me, in my opinion, a better short setup compared to Solana. But the setup for Solana is going to be the same as well, where you have this weak high right here. And also you have this weak high right here with the Fibonacci gap right above. So in the event that you retrace into here, 7:30, you're going to look for a 5-minute CISD and you're going to ride it lower. Now, another reason why I would pick Ethereum over Solana for a short setup today is that compared to Ethereum, Solana does not have a bearish order block. If you take a look here, it's actually in bullish order flow. Whereas Ethereum, you already kind of have a bearish order block in play. So if I had to pick one, I would definitely pick Ethereum as the higher probability play. In terms of shorts, I'm going to lean towards Ethereum as the main focus, right? So depending on how price action shapes up later at 7:30, if it's looking like price is going to go up, I would focus on Bitcoin. If it looks like it's going to go down, I would focus on Ethereum. That is how I would approach today. But anyways, guys, if you would like to get my weekly outlook and figure out exactly how to take advantage of what's about to happen tomorrow and as well as for the rest of the week, as well as if you're a swing trader and you would just like to learn kind of a longer term thesis, click the video on the screen right here. And otherwise, I'll see you guys on Twitter later. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Ciao, ciao.